So in Ezekiel 45:22, I was going to read it for you or put it up on screen, but I forgot to put that screen up, so I'll sit tight. Ezekiel 45:22 discusses that, sacrifices will be made in the third temple, and even mentions, is that where it mentions the prince? I can't remember. I think it does. But anyway.
Yeah, it's one of those places, yeah.
The general question is, if Jesus was supposed to be the final perfect sacrifice, why does Ezekiel prophesy of future sacrifices in the third temple?
That question should be asked of the Pope, not of me. I mean, the Pope should be Rome's chief, not just bishop, but apologist. This is a monumental problem. For the listeners who are unfamiliar with this, we are told throughout the New Testament that Jesus is the sacrifice for mankind's sin, as a vicarious atonement, with the exception of Luke Acts. And therefore, if Jesus is the final sacrifice for sin, so then texts that contain theology in the New Testament, 14 works that have been attributed to Paul, I'm thinking of the 13 that are in Paul's name in the book of Hebrews, these books are, instead of having stories and sayings of Jesus, are just front-loaded with Christian theology. And there we're told Romans chapter 6, verse 10, there we're told Hebrews chapter 10, verse 18, that Jesus is the final sacrifice for all time. There's no longer a need for the animal sacrificial system. It would have no function whatsoever to have a sin offering in the final messianic age. This would be vital to the Christian message, because if the full order of animal sacrifices is restored in the messianic age, then Christianity, for so many reasons, but this one including, is so false. And as it turns out, you know where this is all going. For those who are not familiar with the book of Ezekiel, so the last section of Ezekiel is devoted to the Messianic age. I'm thinking, of course, from Ezekiel 30, let's just say from 34 on all the way through 48. As it turns out, we have the most detailed description of the Messianic age, and we are told there that the sacrificial system is returning in chapter 43, 44, and 45, we're told something astounding. The prince, that's the Messiah. My prince, David, it's the Messiah. He is going to bring a sin offering on behalf of himself and the nation. See Ezekiel 45, verse 22. If we walk that back 2 passages to Ezekiel 45, verse 20, we're told that it's for sins that are committed unintentionally, which is exactly corresponds to Leviticus chapter 4. In Christian theology, this is the end. You don't need anything else, because in Christian theology, Jesus is sinless. So why would he need a sin offering? Why would he be bringing a sin offering? That's utterly incompatible with Christian theology. So much so, I want you to know this, if you look at Christian commentators on Ezekiel 43, 44, but especially on this passage, while many of them hold that it is the Messiah, a vast number of them, and I list them in volume 1 of Let's Get Biblical, say, well, this can't possibly be Jesus. The prince can't be Jesus. It has to be someone else of enormous importance, but it can't be the Messiah, because if it's Messiah, then it's Jesus. And Jesus can't be bringing a sacrifice. So then who is the prince? Is it the janitor? This is an existential problem for the church, because the end of Ezekiel, we have copious information, copious notes of what will actually happen in the Messianic age. If people ask, just read it. It's right there, describing the restoration of the final temple that will stand forevermore in Jerusalem, a sanctuary that no one who is uncircumcised, both of the flesh or the heart, will be able to enter, Ezekiel 44, verse 9. Now, as it turns out, there are Christians that have dealt with this problem, as you can imagine. And some suggest that perhaps Ezekiel 45 is a retrospective memorial to the sacrificial system that once existed. So intrinsically has no value, but it's sort of a memorial to the past, which doesn't work at all. If he's setting aside that Hebrews tells us there's not going to be a sacrificial system, we are told explicitly, it's not inferred, explicitly, this is a sin offering for sins that are committed, b'shogeg, mipesi, which means unintentionally, with foolishness, meaning a mistake. So therefore, what we have is the videotape of what is going to occur, and that there is no Christian voice in Tanakh. The reason why Jewish people who are knowledgeable do not accept the Christian teachings and the Christian Messiah is not because we don't like their outfits. It's not because of Christian anti-Semitism. It's not because we hate Christ or hate church or anything. It's just what we are told in the Christian Bible is utterly opposed by the prophets of Israel. These ideas are antithetical to the Jewish God. And if you're a Christian, you're watching this and you're offended, I'm sorry, but just think about why you reject Mormonism. You probably reject the Mormon. If you're not a Christian, you can continue watching this, but it doesn't apply to you. But if you are a Christian, ask yourself why I don't believe in the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And you'll say, because the teachings of that church is utterly incompatible with the teachings of the Christian Bible. That's a no-brainer, sure. Why don't you believe that David Koresh, the Messiah according to Branch Davidians, is just inconceivable that could be a true religion? It's not because you have any animosity towards him who's dead or what. It's because the ideas that are conveyed are utterly incompatible with the Christian. Well, that's exactly why Judaism doesn't accept the Christian Messiah. When Ezekiel tells us that when Mashiach comes, the full order of sacrifices will return, we're not surprised, but the church has to deal with this. One other footnote on this part. Some people may be wondering, why would there be a sin offering in the Messianic age? After all, something that I've shared with you, it's not that I've had some brilliant insight, it's the clearest message about the Messianic age is that rebellion against God will end. Sin will come to an end. The world will know the truth. God will be king of the whole world. Zechariah 14. The nations will speak in a pure speech. Zephaniah 3, verse 9. The knowledge of God will so infuse the world, we are told by Jeremiah 31, that in those days no one will have to teach anyone about God, for they shall all know me. Meaning, the universal knowledge of God is the centerpiece of the Messianic age. Everything else that we know about the Messianic age is ancillary to that. It's about the salvation of the world, and everyone comes to recognize the truth in the Messianic age. And you can then ask a legitimate question, and that is, how is it possible there will be sin in the world in the Messianic age that would require a sin offering? So this is why Tanakh is just so elegant. This is why when I say it's delicious, it really is. So as it turns out, in the Messianic age, there will not be sin out of rebellion that will come to an end. But by what means is that going to occur? Are we going to just change our personalities? Something is going to happen to us? The answer is that everything will be clear. It'll be obvious. So rebellion will come to an end. But people are still going to make mistakes, meaning that people might still come into contact unknowingly, perhaps carelessly, with something that conveys impurity. In this case, if you come to a state into the sanctuary in a state of impurity, so that requires a sin offering specifically for sins that are committed, errors that are committed out of complete ignorance, because it will not be intentional sins in the Messianic age. And therefore, these chapters are never preached in churches because they're utterly incompatible with Christian teachings. In fact, the book of Ezekiel, with some exceptions, is not studied from beginning to end in churches because the picture that is conveyed, that's crystalline, it's clear, is utterly incompatible with the teaching of the church. If it were compatible with Christian teachings, we'd all be in church right now, including myself. If the Nicene Creed was in there, Doctrine of Trinity is there, eating the body of the Messiah, drinking his blood. For me, I lived 20 minutes for the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. If the Nicene Creed were in the book of Deuteronomy or Ezekiel, in 20 minutes I can be in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The reason I wouldn't go near that abomination is because that monument to idolatry is in opposition to the teachings of the God of Israel. I mean, it's a very interesting question. Thank you.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם